Hello, everyone. I'm Cat Oriel with Forbes Breaking News. Today, I'm here with Congressman Glenn Ivey of Maryland. Congressman, thanks so much for joining me again.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Last night, we had the first presidential debate between former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden. A lot of Democrats are dismayed by President Biden's performance. What's your reaction?
Yeah, I've heard some of that. I'm not panicking. I must say. I think he didn't have his best night for sure. The State of the Union speech that he gave was fantastic. I was with him in Philadelphia a couple weeks ago. He was great there, and I've seen him at the rally today that's been televised, and he looks like he's back on his game. But there's a lot more campaign to come, and I think the other part of this that's positive for us was that. I don't think Trump had a great night either, particularly. I think he lied a lot and in obvious ways that turned off a lot of potentially persuadable voters. And certainly the double haters weren't going to be drawn to him based on what he did and said last night either. So, I think we've got a long ways to go. We got a lot of work to do, but we're definitely still in a position to win this race.
Can you shine more light on that? Because it is something that we're told constantly, that President Biden is a lot better behind closed doors. Is that true? You've talked a little bit about, the other instances in which you've seen him. What is he like in those instances? Was last night really an anomaly?
It was an anomaly from what I've seen. I mean, the Philadelphia rally was a public event. We went there, I think it was about 2 weeks ago. The vice president spoke first. He spoke second. A few thousand people there, mainly a younger crowd. He did a great job with it. And everybody saw the State of the Union, and what a great job he did there. So, the private meetings and things, he's certainly, sharp and knows policy inside and out. But I'm talking about the public aspect of this. And I think he's definitely able to do it. He had a tough night last night, but I don't think that's indicative of who he is or what he can do.
So Rep. Jim Clyburn, among other Democrats, are saying, they plan to speak with Biden today, tell him to stay the course. So I'm assuming you agree with this sentiment coming from top Democrats.
Oh, yeah. The panicky stuff, I don't share that view. I really do think that, we know that he's the only candidate that's ever beaten Donald Trump in a race. I guess Donald Trump doesn't agree with that, but we all know that Joe Biden won fair and square in 2020, and he can do it again in 2024. We got a lot of work to do as far as the campaign goes. I think he's, had a lot of positive developments with the economy. Unemployment being down, inflation went up, but it's coming back down. There's a lot of positive factors. But I think we have to do more to explain to individual voters how they're personally benefiting from the policies he's put in place to really make a difference there. And I think reminding people of what a circus the Trump presidency was, especially on January 6th. And the lies he told about January 6th last night were astonishing. But everybody saw that. They remember what it looks like, and they know for themselves that. Those people weren't tourists. They weren't invited in. We had officers that died that night. It was a big blow against democracy. Fortunately, the nation survived it, but I don't think we should give him a second shot.
Can you speak to that more? Yeah. What is your message to voters who saw last night and are seeing the panic coming from people? Some saying Biden should resign immediately, some saying he shouldn't be the nominee. Can you speak to the voters and reassure them that Biden is fit to serve? Or from your perspective, why is he fit to serve? And how would you reassure them that he's fit to serve for another 4 more years or much less till January?
Well, he's fit to serve because he's been doing a great job as president. And I don't think anybody has shown or really even argued that he's been unfit in one way or another based on his performance. I think he's done a great job of managing the economy. It's a lot of tough circumstances, as he mentioned last night. The U.S. economy was flat on its back after COVID and the Trump presidency. It's really rebounded in a great way. I think with respect to foreign policy, he rallied NATO in a way that Donald Trump never could have done because he alienated most of the European states when he was president. But President Biden was able to rally them in support of Ukraine, even though for many countries like Germany, for example, taking a stand against Russia, which provides much of their oil, or did at the time, was tough for them economically, but the president was able to get them to support it. And he's got a lot of other policies too, ratcheting down prescription drug prices, insulin for $35, for example, bringing back, chip manufacturing to the United States. I mean, the infrastructure, building new bridges and roads. I mean, the list goes on and on of the things that he's done that have been positive for the American people. We just have to do a better job of getting that message out there and explaining to people what it is he's done and how it's benefited them.
Right. I think some people were more distracted by the performance than the actual policies. So I do want to talk about that a little bit more. So one question that was interesting to me was when President Biden was asked to respond to Black voters who might be disappointed that he hasn't made more progress in his first term. And he actually did admit that he doesn't blame them. So what do you think that he has done or hasn't done when it comes to the issues important to Black voters?
Well, unemployment's at all-time lows for African-American workers. Inflation has come back down, as I mentioned. I mean, I think he's done a lot of positive things with respect to not just African-Americans, but all young Americans in particular. Forgiving student loan debt is a big example of that, something that hits them right in the pocketbook and helps them get back on their feet and still, maintain the benefits of getting the education that they went to school so they can improve their lives economically. We've got a lot of challenges in the country for sure that affect African Americans and all Americans across the board. But I think he's doing a lot to help improve those things as well. Sadly, my community, me, for example, suffer from a lot of maladies where we have to take prescription drugs to maintain our health. He's doing a great job of, I mentioned insulin a few minutes ago for diabetics, but also creating a scenario where the United States government can negotiate those prices down for a range of other drugs too. So, there's a lot of positive things that have happened there, helping historically Black colleges with funding and getting additional grants and the like. It's a lot of positives. We just have to make sure we get the message out so people hear it. And not just for African Americans. I think that's true for, other groups across the board. I think he's been a real benefit to America as a whole.
You mentioned the threat to democracy a bit when it came to the claims from President Donald Trump. What else did you hear from him last night that you were concerned about?
Well, I mean, he didn't really back away from the, using the government to retaliate against his opponents. He also never acknowledged that he would just straight up accept the results of the 2024 election, which I found, it's all this conditional stuff, whereas everybody else before this, everybody else that ran for president, if you asked them if they would accept the results of the election, they'd say yes and stop talking and look at you quizzically like, what kind of question is that? For Donald Trump, it's a real issue. And unfortunately, he's inspired other people like the Republican Senate candidate in Arizona to deny that they lose. If they win, they win. If they lose, it was stolen, as seems to be their mantra. And the January 6th piece, an effort to actually steal the election from President Biden, essentially an attempted coup, is deeply disturbing too, because he, again, took no responsibility for his role in that and basically acted like the things that they were doing were fine. And that's shocking and pathetic, and I think a real scary position for a potential president, certainly for a former president, to take from the standpoint of respecting the rule of law and American democracy.
Mm-hmm. And beyond that, though, what are the topics that we already talked about that are important to you and your constituents, such as the cost of prescription drugs, maybe access to reproductive rights and abortion care, and what about a second Trump presidency scares you about the other issues that we talked about so far?
Well, as you mentioned, abortion was a huge issue that came up last night. I think he was kind of all over the place on that, but I think Trump basically said that I think he's trying to flip-flop on his position, but basically he's previously said that he favored a national ban on abortion. And as President Biden pointed out, if Republicans take control of Congress and pass a national ban, Joe Biden would veto it, Donald Trump would sign it into law. And I think that's a fundamental distinction. We've seen abortion as an issue in states across the country. Everywhere that it comes up on the ballot, the voters support protecting women's rights to make those decisions. trying to move back to where Roe v. Wade was, instead of, there's another state that came out today or yesterday that after 6 weeks, abortion is going to be banned. And of course, many women, are just finding out they're pregnant, much less, figuring out if they have a pregnancy where, for whatever reason, their health might be at stake, or the baby's going to die, or whatever it is. Information that they need to know before they make a decision about whether they should get an abortion or not frequently comes after 6 weeks. And so I think it makes sense to get the politicians out of the exam room and let women make the decisions as to what they should do in their own bedrooms and with their own wombs.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you would like to add about the debate that we didn't get to touch on yet?
I think that does it.
Thank you so much for your time today, Congressman.